Right then, here we are once again inside the wonderful world of War Thunder, where today we're taking a look at everyone's least favourite reserve fighter, the Boeing P-26 Peashooters. All three of them. Now some of you might be thinking, wait a minute, didn't he already do a video about the Peashooter? And you would be correct. However, if you go back and watch that particular video, you'll see that it only covers the first P-26, the blue one, and also was a bit crap. So this time we're going to take a new look, a fresh look, at this fighter, as well as the two later variants, in a more complete and interesting manner. Now, as always, I'll be doing the history and technical details first. If you come to these videos just for the battle for some bizarre reason, however, then fear not. Timecode, video description, you know the drill. For the rest of us, let's put on our chaps and our leather cowboy boots, strap on our irons, and touch the brims of our 10-gallon hats at the history of the Boeing P-26. As I'm sure you know, you really ought to know by now at least, the United States was the first country to create a vehicle capable of powered, sustained, controlled heavier-than-air flight, in the form of the Wright Flyer, built by Wilbur and Orville Wright at Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, on the 17th of December 1903, flown by Orville Wright. However, the Wright brothers at the time did not realize the significance of their historical achievement until 1907, at which point several other individuals, mostly from Europe, had also claimed this accomplishment, such as Trajan Vuja, as is talked about in the Dewatin D370 video. Link in the description. However, when the Wright brothers finally did reveal their flyer to the world, while in Europe it was met with great interest and enthusiasm, sparking the pioneering age of flight, this attitude was not reflected across the pond. Indeed, the Smithsonian Institution refused to recognize the Wright brothers' achievement, and even declined to display the Wright Flyer, which had recently been repaired following its submersion during the Great Dayton Flood in 1913, in the Smithsonian Museum. Wilbur Wright died in 1912, at the age of 45, from typhoid fever, which was exacerbated greatly by the stress of trying to get his and his brother's achievement recognized, and from the many patent lawsuits that they were having to fight off, most significantly from Glenn Curtis. The flyer was not displayed to the public in 1928, where, following a threat from Orville to the Smithsonian that if they did not exhibit his and his brother's vehicle, that he'd send it to London, it was displayed for the first time in the Science Museum in London, where it remained prominently displayed in the place of honour in the main hall until 1948, being only removed during the Second World War to prevent it from being damaged during the Blitz. Only after Orville died was the Wright Flyer put on display in the Arts and Industries building of the Smithsonian Museum, finally getting the recognition it deserved. The Wright Flyer can be seen today at the National Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C. That is, all of it but a small piece of wing fabric that was placed on the lunar surface by the crew of Apollo 11 as a symbol of how far the human race had come in the 66 years between these two foundational achievements. The United States Army Air Service was created in May 1918 upon an executive order by President Woodrow Wilson and replaced the aviation section of the Signal Corps, which had been the only provider of air support for the American Expeditionary Force since it had gone over to France in 1917. The American aviation industry could not, however, produce sufficient numbers of aeroplanes to meet the requirements of the USAAS, and they, having foreseen this, equipped their pilots primarily with French aircraft, such as Spads, Nieuports and Brigets, as well as a few British de Havilland DH-4 two-seaters. By the end of the First World War, the Army Air Service fielded a quite significant air fleet of some 7,900 aircraft. However, following the US Army's demobilization, the Air Service was in serious risk of disbandment. It was only through the perseverance of General Billy Mitchell, recognized today as the father of the United States Air Force, that the American government recognized the importance of air power, most notably with Mitchell's demonstrations of torpedoes dropped by aircraft, which showed that an incredibly expensive battleship could be sunk by a comparatively very cheap aeroplane. As a result of these tests, and Mitchell's notable court-martial, where he publicly and persuasively prophesied the importance of aircraft in any future conflict, the air service was expanded to become the United States Army Air Corps, but not the independent military branch that Mitchell wanted. William Edward Boeing began his career in the logging industry, purchasing areas of spruce wood around Seattle, Washington, and shipping the lumber around to the East Coast using the new Panama Canal in 1910. However, when he saw his first flying machine, he became enthralled with the idea of flight, and immediately began taking flying lessons with Glenn L. Martin in Los Angeles. Soon enough, Boeing bought himself a Martin S biplane, the so-called flying birdcage, which he promptly crashed. When Martin said that they could not deliver the replacement parts necessary to repair the aircraft for several months, William Boeing turned to his buddy, Commander George Conrad Westervelt of the US Navy, and said, "We can build a better plane ourselves, by golly, and build it faster." Westervelt said, "I think you've got something there, Willie," and they went into business as B&W in 1916. Their first aircraft, the Boeing Model 1, also known as the B&W seaplane, was completed by June of that year, and was indeed a superior aircraft than the Martin S. During the First World War, the company's name was changed to the Boeing Airplane Company, and manufactured seaplanes for the US Navy. After the First World War, however, the huge amount of surplus aircraft drove many aviation companies out of business. Boeing kept his company afloat by selling furniture, using his experience in the timber industry. This meant that, in 1919, he was able to make a comeback to aviation with the Boeing B-1 flying boat, which was widely used as an international mail plane. The first Boeing airliner, the Boeing 80, first flew in 1928 and began the long line of Boeing airliners that are still used by most airlines today. Boeing began its foray into fighter aircraft in 1923 with the Boeing PW-9, in competition with the Curtiss Corporation to provide a new pursuit fighter to the US Army Air Corps. Although the PW-9 lost the contract, Boeing's next fighter, the P-12, was adopted by both the Army and Navy in large numbers. In 1931, Boeing set out to develop a more modern fighter aircraft than the wooden canvas biplanes then in service. With the aid of the USAAC, who provided engines for testing, as well as the standardized flight instruments, the prototype, named the Boeing Model 248, first flew in March 1920. Some of its features, such as its all-metal construction and monoplane configuration, were very advanced for the time, it being the first such fighter aircraft to enter USAAC service. However, many features such as the open cockpit, fixed landing gear, wire bracing on the wings, and an armament of only 2.3-inch Browning M1919 machine guns remained distinctly primitive. Upon testing, it was found that the Model 248 was dangerous to land, having a high stall speed and a nasty tendency to flip over when braking. To remedy this, the next prototype, the XP-936, was fitted with flaps, and the first production aircraft, the P-26A, featured a taller fuselage spine with an armoured headrest to protect the pilot if the plane nosed over. Despite the P-26 being one of the most advanced fighter aircraft when it entered service in 1933, the slightly faster Dewatin D-500, coming soon in a video near you, was adopted by the French Air Force not long after. And only 2 years later, the far superior Polikarpov I-16 with its retractable undercarriage entered service with the Red Army Air Force. Even as the Curtiss P-36, the Messerschmitt Bf-109 and the Hawker Hurricane were all entering service in 1935, the USAAC retained the P-26 as a frontline fighter for the reason that it was easy to fly. However, by 1938 it was beginning to dawn on the American High Command that this fighter was inadequate in terms of armament and performance compared to the more modern European fighters, and so a program to replace the P-26s with Seversky P-35s and Curtiss P-36s was begun. The P-26s were transferred to places such as Panama and the Philippines, where it was believed they would be away from any fighting if war broke out. 12 Boeing P-26s were sold to China, who used them against the invading Japanese. These fighters were involved in the world's first dogfight between all-metal monoplanes when 8 Chinese Nationalist Air Force P-26s clashed with Imperial Japanese Navy Mitsubishi A-5Ms, escorting a flight of G-3M bombers on the 15th of August 1937. The P-26s succeeded in shooting down some of the Japanese bombers, although how many of the fighters were destroyed is unknown. The Spanish Republican Air Force managed to acquire a single Boeing P-26, however it did not achieve any notable success before being shot down in 1936. Guatemala also acquired the 9 P-26s America had stationed in Panama, as well as an additional 7 smuggled from the States to get around trade restrictions in 1943. These remained in Guatemalan Air Force service until 1956, before being replaced with P-51s. In American service, the only place the P-26 saw action was in the Philippines, where the 28 stationed there were forced to combat the far superior fighters operated by the invading Japanese. Despite this, the 6th Pursuit Squadron, which was operated by the Philippine Army Air Corps, managed to destroy a single G-3M bomber and 2 A-6M fighters before the country fell, and the fighters were burned to prevent their capture. 111 P-26As, 2 P-26Bs and 35 P-26Cs, including 12 Boeing Model 281 export versions, were built. The Boeing P-26 was the last fighter aircraft produced by Boeing Aviation until 2002, when Boeing acquired McDonnell Douglas and thus inherited production of the F/A-18E/F Super Hornet, and thus ends the tale of the Boeing P-26. But don't turn off your sets yet, kids, because now we're going to take a little look at the P-26 inside the wonderful world of War Thunder. So, here we have the Boeing P-26, often nicknamed Peashooter, here in the wonderful world of War Thunder. Look at it there, isn't it lovely? In War Thunder, we have 3 versions of the P-26, as well as one ultra-rare collectible edition, but I'll talk about that one later, all of which we'll be covering in today's video, because they're all very similar to each other. We have the P-26A-33, the P-26A-34M2, and the P-26B-35. Let's start with the A-33, shall we? The Boeing P-26 is a single-engine monoplane fighter aircraft with a conventional tail assembly. It is of all-metal semi-monocoque construction, and the low-set monoplane wings are wire-braced, as opposed to the more common cantilever configuration utilized by such aircraft. This was done for 2 reasons. It was lighter, as it did not necessitate heavy reinforced wing spars, and Boeing at the time did not believe that cantilever wings would be able to withstand the forces of aerial combat. The downside to wire bracing, however, is of course that it produces a lot of drag. The power plant consists of a single Pratt & Whitney R1340-27 9-cylinder air-cooled radial piston engine, producing 550 horsepower or 405 kilowatts, turning a Hamilton Standard metal 2-bladed adjustable pitch propeller, which enables the aircraft to reach a maximum speed of around 204 miles per hour in level flight at 10,000 feet, or 328 kilometers per hour at 3,000 meters. This engine does not feature wartime emergency power capability. Also, it should be noted that it is carburetor fed and will cut out during negative G maneuvers. The maximum design speed of the aircraft is 300 miles per hour or 483 kilometers per hour, and the maximum structural speed, the point at which the airplane will begin to break up, is around 330 miles per hour or 531 kilometers per hour. The engine is enclosed by a NACA cowling, which slightly increases aerodynamic performance and cooling efficiency. Directly behind the engine, on the lower left, is the oil cooler. Behind the engine, directly in front of the cockpit, is the oil reservoir. The engine has quite a large cross-section and thus is rather prone to taking damage. The P-26 has a crew of one, the pilot, who sits in the open cockpit quite far forwards in the aircraft, directly above the wings. He has excellent visibility all round, with no upper wing to block his forward view, as would be the case in a biplane. The windscreen consists of 3 perspex panels bolted together and reinforced with 2 thin metal struts. This adds to the fighter's excellent forward visibility. Contrary to popular belief, the name Peashooter does not seem to derive from the P-26's long telescopic gun sight, which may resemble a long tube through which one might be inclined to shoot peas, because as you can see, the P-26 doesn't have a telescopic gun sight. Instead, it has this long pole to which are attached 2 sight blades, such as on a rather primitive musket. The term Peashooter may be in reference to this feature, however in my research I have found that it is more likely in reference to the aircraft's rather piddly armament, which fires through 2 long tubes going between the cylinder heads in the engine, which actually kind of do resemble tubes for the shooting of peas. But that'll come later, for first it's back to the cockpit. In the middle, in a raised section, are the main flight instruments, and hooray, they're all in English. Firstly, those 2 knobs appear in photographs of real P-26 cockpits as bolts holding the instrument panel in place, so that's what I'm going to say that they are. On the top left is the airspeed indicator in miles per hour, and below it is the altimeter, measured in feet. In the middle is the compass, and below it is the turn and slip indicators. On the top right is the engine tachometer, and below it is a combined gauge that shows engine temperature in degrees centigrade of all things, as well as oil temperature and fuel flow. On the far right is the chronometer, and below it is the manifold pressure indicator. Manifold pressure is the amount of suction your engine is applying to the cylinder intake manifold. The altitude indicator, turn and slip indicator, and chronometer are all adjustable with those little knobs. And holy crap, this instrument panel is so incredibly easy to read. Not just because it's in English. It's uncluttered, all the instruments are in logical locations and nicely spaced out, nothing is hiding behind some box jutting out of the side, nothing is itself jutting out of the side of the cockpit, and it's all nice and neatly placed directly in front of the pilot where he can see it, and it's all in the form of large, easy-to-read gauges. France, Italy, take note. This is what an instrument panel is supposed to look like. Well done, America. Moving on, things get a little less ergonomically satisfying. To the left of the instrument panel is a switch labelled mainline off and on. This is likely the fuel cutoff switch. Next to it is the voltmeter. That large switch looks like a fuel tank selector switch, but it is in fact the magneto selector. The sign saying pull to engage clutch and booster is referring to that large red lever, which presumably activates the wartime emergency power if the aircraft has it, which this one doesn't. Below that is a useful set of diagrams and information relating to the aircraft specifications, such as weights and dimensions, the layout of the wing bracing, and how the fuel system functions. Below that is the throttle lever, as well as the fuel mixture control lever. Tucked down there next to the pilot on the left are 2 levers which control the aircraft's trim. The P-26 has trim tabs on the elevators as well as the ailerons. Not sure what that little black module is for, but there is another one on the other side. It may have something to do with the electrical system, but I'm not really sure. If you know what it is for, why not write it in the in the comments section down below. Down on the right hand side is a wooden box containing the maps, which tend to be useful for navigation. In the middle is the flight stick, which also features the trigger for the aircraft's armament, which is controlled by the pilot's index finger. In front of it, hanging down from the instrument panel, are the fuel controls. You've got your fuel tank selector switch, your main auxiliary and reserve tank selector, and of course your fuel gauge. Although in War Thunder this doesn't seem to function properly. Next to it is a switch that arms the trigger. If the aircraft were carrying bombs, this switch could presumably be used to select between guns or bombs, controlled using the main trigger. At the pilot's feet are the rudder pedals, and between them is the radio box. This cockpit is not as neatly laid out as it could be, but I'm sure you'll all agree it's far, far better than the cockpits of either the Fiat CR32 or the Dewatin D370. Down there by the pilot's feet, accessible from the cockpit should they jam, are the P-26's main armament. This consists of two fixed-forward firing .3-inch or 7.62mm Browning M1919 machine guns synchronized with the propeller, each with 500 rounds of ammunition for a total of 1,000 rounds. Armament choices are default, with tracer omnipurpose ball armor-piercing and incendiary bullets in a TBBBAPI arrangement. Universal, with tracer armor-piercing and incendiary bullets in a TAPI configuration. Tracer, with armor-piercing and tracer bullets in an APTTTT arrangement. And Stealth, with armor-piercing and incendiary bullets in an APAPAPII configuration. Kinda like a song, isn't it? As with most aircraft, I use the universal belts myself, because my aim is even more terrible with anything else. But if you can use them, the stealth belts are definitely the most effective, containing the highest concentration of incendiary bullets. The optional secondary armament, provided you have unlocked the Mark 41 bomb racks, consists of two 100-pound or 45kg AN-M30A1 bombs, each of which contain 54 pounds or 24.5 kilograms of Amatol high explosive, with an explosive yield of a roughly equivalent amount of TNT. These can be useful in ground battles, but you have to be very accurate with your bombing to kill anything with armor. As usual, I'd recommend setting your bomb fuses to 2 seconds to ensure that you don't blow yourself up in the process. Directly underneath the cockpit is the central fuel tank. There is another in each wing, which combined provide a total fuel capacity of 55 US gallons, or 208 litres, which allows for a maximum flight time of 1 hour and 42 minutes. I, however, would recommend only carrying the minimum amount of fuel, which is 30 minutes worth. This keeps the weight down, and it's very unlikely that you'll be flying around for any longer than that. Although the fuel tanks are self-sealing, they are very prone to taking damage, especially the ones in the wings. Also in the wings you can see the very thin wing spars. Because the wings are wire braced, the spars don't have to be all that sturdy. What this means, however, is that the wings cannot take very much damage before collapsing. On the starboard wing is the pitot head, and attached to the starboard side of the cockpit is the airflow measuring device. The aircraft has a fixed tailwheel landing gear arrangement. Both the main wheels and the tail wheel are aerodynamically faired. This particular P-26 is actually a pre-production example, as it lacks both the landing flaps of later variants and the raised spine to protect the pilot if the aircraft noses over. Takeoff in the P-26 is spectacularly easy, with no flaps or landing gear to worry about. Landing can be a little tricky. With no flaps you can often find yourself approaching too fast, so make sure you slow down in the air before making your approach. Manoeuvrability in the air is okay, but don't expect it to win any dogfights against biplanes flown by people who know what they're doing. Likewise, pretty much every other monoplane can outperform the P-26 in terms of speed and rate of climb, so here's what you do. When fighting biplanes, use this aircraft's generally superior speed to energy fight, and when fighting monoplanes, turn fight. This aircraft's small size tends to make it more manoeuvrable than more modern monoplanes. If you encounter a Japanese fighter, however, good luck. The P-26 A34M2 is generally similar, with a few important differences. The engine, for example, is a Pratt & Whitney R1340-33, as opposed to the P-26 A33's R1340-27, which, while it outputs the same amount of power as its older counterpart, 550 horsepower or 405 kilowatts, it can produce wartime emergency power, boosting the output to 611 horsepower or 449 kilowatts. However, this doesn't appear to do anything for the aircraft's performance. In fact, in level flight, the P-26A34 is actually slightly slower than the P-26A33 at 195 miles per hour or 314 kilometers per hour at 10,000 feet or 3,000 meters. One notable advantage that this engine has over its predecessor, however, is that it is fuel-injected rather than float carburetor-fed, meaning that it can handle negative G maneuvers better. The engine will still cut out after a few seconds, however, as the fuel in the tanks floats away from the fuel pump apertures. Design and structural speeds are the same as the A33. The cockpit of the P-26A34 is identical to that of the A33, other than this aircraft does feature the raised reinforced spine, which should theoretically protect the pilot should the plane nose over. However, like the A33, the A34 has no armour protection, meaning that the pilot is especially vulnerable to attack from behind. The main difference between this aircraft and its predecessor, however, as I'm sure you know, lies in its main armament. While the port machine gun is the same 0.3-inch or 7.62mm Browning M1919 with 500 rounds, the starboard weapon is in fact a 0.5-inch or 12.7mm Browning M2 heavy machine gun with 200 rounds of ammunition. This is the most powerful weapon mounted on any reserve aircraft, including Italy's 12.7mm Breda Safats, and is quite capable of punching holes through even light tanks in ground forces battles. The ammunition choices you get for the M2 are as follows: a default belt with tracer, ball, incendiary and armor-piercing bullets in a TBIAP configuration, a universal belt with armor-piercing tracer and incendiary bullet in an APAPAPTI configuration, a ground target belt with tracer and armor-piercing bullets in a TAPAPAP configuration, a tracer belt with tracer and armor-piercing bullets in a TTTAP configuration, and a stealth belt with armor-piercing and incendiary bullets in an APIAP configuration. Personally, I would recommend using stealth belts if you can, or if not, like me, the universal belts are quite effective. For tank battles, however, if you can't use the stealth belts, go for the ground target belts. Secondary loadout of two 100-pound bombs is the same. Another change made to the P-26A34 is that a small pair of split trailing edge flaps have been added to the wings, with two settings, up or landing. This makes the A34 much easier to land than its predecessor, and the flaps can even be used to drastically increase manoeuvrability in combat, at the expense of speed, so use wisely. The final change made to the P-26A34 is that the side covers of the aerodynamic fairings for the main landing gear units have been removed, exposing the wheels. This was done to reduce weight slightly, as well as to make access to the wheels for maintenance easier. The P-26B-35 is pretty much identical to the P-26A-34, other than it reverts to the original armament of 2 .3-inch Browning M1919 machine guns. The reason for this is that the M2 modification was actually a optional modification for the P-26, often applied by the crews in the field. So the armament of 2 .3-inch Browning machine guns is actually the standard armament for factory fresh P-26s, and the M2 modification came later. And in fact, the P-26A-34 we have in game is a later aircraft than the B-35, even though the B-35 was a later modification of the P-26, because the camouflage scheme that the A-34 M2 uses is in fact the later pattern used but in the Philippines, as opposed to the B-35's camouflage pattern, which was an earlier version. There we go, let's get back on script now. The engine is the same Pratt & Whitney R1340-33 radial engine, which, despite being slightly less powerful than its predecessors, allows the aircraft to match the P-26A-33's top speed in level flight of 204 miles per hour, or 328 kilometers per hour. The reason for this drop in engine output may be due to the fact that the exhaust outlets on the top 3 cylinders have been combined into a single exhaust pipe, which is channeled to the starboard side of the aircraft before releasing the exhaust gases. While this does reduce the amount of poisonous fumes being blown into the pilot's face, as with the previous models, the exhaust fumes would simply be vented directly from the cylinders, this does slightly reduce engine power because the exhaust gases have to be pushed out through a longer tube. Other changes include the restoration of the covers over the main landing gear wheels, because as I said earlier this is an earlier aircraft than the M2 we have in game, and the removal of the wheel covers is a field modification. The tail wheel is also replaced. Instead of the semi-recessed large version we have in the earlier models, it is a smaller, fully exposed one that can rotate more easily. The application of an additional setting to the flaps is also new. As well as up and landing, they can also now be set to combat position, which certainly comes in handy during dogfights. Other than that, everything about the Boeing P-26 P-35 is pretty much the same as its predecessors. The last variant of the Boeing P-26 that we have here in War Thunder is the Philippine Army Air Force P-26 A-34. I do not own one of these, and I've never seen one in-game, but from information provided in the War Thunder website I can tell you that it is pretty much identical to the P-26 A-34 we have in the main tech tree, albeit with a snazzy new paint scheme, and the two 30 cals instead of one 30 and one 50 cal. It was only ever available twice, as a reward aircraft for purchasing 2 bundles in the November 2014 Thanksgiving Day event, and a prize in the 2015 Independence Day tournament. So if you're lucky enough to own one of these dinky little Filipino fighters, don't overlook it, for that thing is one of the rarest aircraft in game. Now, without further ado, let's see how these 3 fighters, not the Filipino one, because as I said I don't have one, but out of the ones that we do have in War Thunder, perform in combat. Shall we? Alright, so here on the first battle, somewhere in Russia again, or Germany. I can't read the small letters, the screen's too small anyway, so here we are on the runway in the P-26A-33, the first of the 3. And we're taking off amongst all the other low-tier biplanes and monoplanes. No triplanes, but then again, there weren't really any triplanes in World War II, were there? There were a lot of triplanes in World War I, but none in World War II because they realised it was a stupid idea. Anyway, so what we're doing is we're going over towards the side. We're siding to the climbing to the side, as they say. Heading over towards the Allied bombing point. We're going to fly over it and then head over towards the enemy bombing point. But before we get there, we'll probably encounter something that we are able to at least take a few shots at, if not shoot down. because this aircraft does have the rather weedy armament of two 30 caliber machine guns. And 30 caliber, of course, means 0.3 inches, so a third of an inch. No, that would be 0.33 recurring. So, 0.3 inches. And we're climbing. Not the fastest, we're not the best looking, not the most manoeuvrable, don't have the best weapons, but by God, we're the bluest and the yellowest. Unless, of course, there is a F2 somewhere. So, taking a little look around, seeing what's going on. Someone's attacking the artillery. Just about to fly over the Allied Boeing Point. Don't need to worry about not flying directly over it, because we're much too high to be affected by any bombs landing on it. That precaution is only necessary for ground attack aircraft, which are flying about low down. And now we're turning over towards the enemy bombing point. I've found this formula of side climbing, just climbing to the side, works more or less most of the time. There's a Henkel HE-112, bunch of Joymans, there's some Japanese fighters for some reason. And we're going to go and see what we can shoot down. Luckily everything seems to be lower than us right now, which is good. This aeroplane doesn't have the, well, you want to have an energy advantage in every plane, but especially with this one, because it's so slow and crap. But yes, triplanes in World War I. They were very manoeuvrable, but also very slow. That's why everybody gave up on them. Did you know that the first triplane of World War I, as far as I remember, is in fact a British aircraft called the Fokker triplane? There's a Henkel HE-51 down there, I think I'm going to go for that. Also, did you know that the British even built a quadruplane, a plane with 4 wings? Anyway, we're diving down. It didn't see service, of course. Diving down on what appears to be a cluster of rather powerful looking fighters. We've got a Ki-43, a Bf-109, and something else. I can't see what it is, the screen's too blurry. And oh, we're opening up. We got a critical hit, he's leaking coolant. We're still shooting, my terrible aim lets me down again. But we've crippled that Bf-109. We're pulling up and we're going to do a little loop round. We've got a supreme energy advantage. He's caught low and slow, he doesn't know what to do. We're swooping down on him again. He's lost engine power, it seems like. And now we're going in for that kill. Take a few pot shots and we can get a few more hits. But oh no, we're being attacked by anti-aircraft fire. I realise it's not an enemy fighter, so I ignore it. And still shooting at him. We're a little bit out of range, but we can still hit him. He does appear to have lost engine power significantly. But oh no! We're being shot at from behind now! Well, no matter. I'm going to get this Bf-109, even if it kills me. Still shooting at him. Still out of range. The shots aren't doing very much, but they're doing something. They're making little holes in his aeroplane, and every hole makes him slightly less aerodynamic and airworthy. The shots do appear to be going everywhere, and of course let down by my terrible aim. Then he suffers some significant damage, and I realise that I have to turn around, otherwise I'm going to get shot down by all these other guys. And they are swarming all over me, and I can't shake them. I'm manoeuvring, but they're hitting me. Luckily they haven't hit anything important yet. My fuel tanks are holding up, they aren't leaking. And I get a few hits on that Ki-43. He thinks twice about flying in front of me again. But the other one, yeah, that's another Ki-43 I think. He's on my tail and I can't shake him. And he's got two 13 or 12.7mm guns, which are heavy machine guns. And haha! The Bf-109 succumbs to his withering injuries. But then, soon enough, I succumb to mine. And they shred my wing off, and I plummet into a building. Right, so next, here we are in Germany. Yes, Duisburg, that's in Germany. In the A34 M2. Hopefully we can get some more damage done before we're shot down. In this particular aeroplane, it does have a 12.7mm machine gun, as you know. And so we're taking off into the air. No takeoff flaps, but then why would you need it? Such a tiny little aeroplane. Looking around, it's nice and dusky. By which I mean it is late in the evening and the sun is going down. Everybody's flying straight down the middle. Here's the view of the cockpit. Looking out, all the other fighters. There's a French one over there. Looking behind, you can see a Nimrod. And another P-26. Hello, fellow P-26. You're a B-35. And at the instruments. Look at them there. Aren't they lovely? And so we're climbing up towards the Allied bombing point, and then over towards the enemy bombing point, and then shooting at any targets that present themselves. It is a very pretty game though, isn't it? Ah, there's a Dornier Doe 17 up there. It's probably the bomber version, if it's up so high. And flying over the Allied bombing point, it's time to turn towards the enemy bombing point. We're not going to bomb them, we aren't a bomber. Oh, he's been shot down by the SB-2U, that funny little dive bomber thing. Used by literally everyone. And of course by literally I mean virtually, because that's the new meaning of literally, isn't it? In today's society. There's one of those Italian ground attack aircraft and another Dornier. Uh-oh, and a HE-100. Those things are dangerous. If flown by a competent pilot. But then you could say the same about any aircraft. Apart from maybe the P-26. Right, so there's a Bf-109 diving down. But there are a lot of fighters up high. Higher than I am. Higher than the sky. Higher than the sun. Shoot me from a gun now. Going down excavation. Or was it elevation? Who cares? And no, we're not going to go and tangle with those ones. We don't have an energy advantage. And if we don't have that, we don't have any advantage. Apart from maybe armament. But it's no good having better armament if you can't get your guns to bear. But then I decided, well, we can't go flying around up in the air forever. We're going to go attack this Bf-109, energy advantage or not. There does appear to be a Dewatin who's helping us out. He's gonna go for him, it looks like. But we're gonna get there first. Swoop. Oh, he hasn't taken notice of us. We're swooping down. We're gonna get a few shots, it looks like. Going inverted. Whoa! He's ignoring us still. And it looks like he's spotted us. He's turning to try and avoid. But we have the... oh no, I started over-speeding. We're going to have to pull up. Can't go breaking the wings off. And we're going to have to renew our dive from up here. Uh-oh, we're being shot at. What's shooting at us? Oh no, there's a Heinkel HE-100, probably the same one I saw earlier. And he's caught us off guard. I was too focused on that BF-109. But then I decide, well, if that HE-100 is going to shoot at us, there's not much I can do about that, so I'm going to go and see if I can shoot down that BF-109 I saw earlier. HE-100 comes in for another swoop. Oh no, he's still hanging up there. But we're going to go and attack that BF-109. HE-100 or not. Who doesn't appear to be swooping down on us fast enough. He's trying to, but he's not quite got the speed. He's building it up there, and quickly. He's closing the distance. And I decide, well, I don't want to be caught too off guard, so I'm going to turn around and get a few shots at him. Aha! Take that, HE-100. Fear my mighty ineffectual shots. And he does, and plows straight into the ground. So I'm counting that as a kill. Anyway, the BF-109 is shooting at our friend, who appears to be crash landing. And I say, that's not on, that's not sporting. And we take some shots at him, and we hit him. And someone else is getting in on the fun as well, but I was here first, buddy. You're gonna have to wait your turn. And we get a critical hit. We hit his right wing, and he's going down. Someone else is still shooting at him, trying to nick my kill. But not today, Sonny Jim. So there, well, we shot down a BF-109 and didn't get shot down ourselves in the process. Isn't that quite the achievement? That HE-112 appears to be going down for a little look, but he's going in the other direction. And so I'm hanging around, well, trying to find guys coming in for landing. There's Dornier Doe 17 over there. I'm going to swoop down on him, see if I can't get some shots at him before he lands. It's not sporting to shoot at people once they've landed, of course. But once they're in the air, or as long as they're still in the air, it's fair game. But it doesn't seem that we're going to get close enough to shoot at him before we're in range of his base anti-aircraft guns, and yet I pull away. Because those guns are very lethal and very accurate. He's shooting at us with his dorsal gun. And I'm looking, I'm hanging around still, and oh no, we're hit by flak! And we're leaking oil. That's not a good sign. If you leave an oil leak unattended, well, your engine's going to overheat and seize up, so there's nothing to it. We're going to have to fly back to base and get repairs done. And that's exactly what we're doing. We're coming in for a landing now. The oil's still leaking. It's not quite overheated yet. Flap set to landing position. Coming in for a nice, gentle landing. You might still be saying, oh, that landing's a little low, don't you think? You're supposed to be up higher in case you need to come round for another pass. Well, I say, the engine's about to die. I'm not going to have another chance. Yeah, got to land it now. So that's exactly what I do. Just look how easy this airplane is to land. Barely have to do anything. Don't want to be landing on the grass. And on the runway, there we are. Engine cut. Braking. No need to use our guns, because that's stupid. It's a stupid thing to do. Being overpassed by that massive French bomber. And slow down for a nice, graceful stop. And turn the engine off. Lovely. So, we're about to take off again. Here we go. Taking off again. Up in the air. Gotta see what else we can do. Is there anything we can do? Probably not. But we're gonna be there in case we do. Another P-26 landed. And we're up in the air. Taking a little look around. Seeing what's going on. But it looks like the baddies are about to run out of points, or tickets, or whatever they're called, and yes, indeed, we've won. So, that's one aeroplane shot down, and another one, which I claim for myself. Right, third battle, here we are in the B-34. Some would say it's the best one. I would say those people are idiots. It's not the best one. The best one is the A-34M2. Anyway, so we're climbing up into the air. Going to the side, of course. Don't want to be shot at or rammed by any idiot flying a biplane. If you want to do that sort of thing, go back and play arcade, you scrub. And we're going up in the air. And following the same old routine of flying over the Allied bombing point. Then flying towards the enemy bombing point until we see something we can shoot down. Or at least shoot at. Now you might be thinking, why do I always go to the right side of the map? Well, the answer is I don't. I just happen to do so on these battles. It looks like we're in Germany again. Essen. Or whatever this map's called. Nothing much buzzing about. There's a few ground attack aircraft. That Italian one, that's utterly useless. Well, it's not utterly useless, but I seem to do very poorly in it. Our allies are all buzzing about. There's an HE-111 over there. But he's much too high up and much too fast for us to bother with. So we're going to fly over this little bombing point. And then we're going to turn towards the enemy bombing point. Here we go. Oh, there's a Italian ground attack aircraft there. A Breda BA-64. Or 62. Whichever one it is. But I don't want to be trading all this altitude just for a Breda BA-64. So we're going to ignore him for now. He's not an urgent target. Our job as a fighter is to eliminate the fighter opposition first, before chasing ground attack aircraft and bombers. And here come the cluster, or the schwarm, of enemy fighters. Looks like they got Bf-109s and a CR-42. All of which are quite capable of rendering me a new excretal aperture. Oh, and a HE-51 as well. And a bomber version of the Dornier Dose 17. I mean, the fighter version. The bomber version is the regular version. The fighter version is the unusual one. Looks like little Frenchman is going to go have some fun. We might follow him. That CR-42 appears to be shooting at our CR-714. And yes, looks like we're just about getting high enough for us to start thinking about something we might want to shoot down. Looking around, that HE-112 looks intriguing. You might be thinking, oh, you're in a P-26, shouldn't you be not biting off more than you can chew? And I say, well, that's what you gotta do in these reserve aircraft. You gotta be plucky and scrappy. You gotta be, you gotta be barking at the big dogs. The Bf-109s and the HE-112s. Uh-oh, he's got a cannon and he's shooting at us. So we're gonna duck and weave. One hit from that thing will probably be our lot. But he doesn't have the energy advantage, we do. So we take a few shots at him, we manage to swoop down, get on his tail. And oh, looks like I'm gonna black out soon. Getting a few more hits, but as you can see my aim is still terrible. And we're still behind him. He's not going to get away. Unless of course I black out, like I almost do. So I have to stop turning, otherwise I will. And back on this tail. And got the perfect shot here, but I messed it up because I'm an idiot. Just get a few hits. Nothing important. He's still ducking and weaving. We're blowing up behind him. Almost blacking out again. Someone else is taking a few shots at him. Well, I say, yeah, you could probably do better than I can. They set him smoking. I get a critical hit. Hit something important. Fuselage. And then, yep, oh, he's on fire. And because our teammate set him on fire, I say, well done you. That's your kill. In War Thunder, if you set fire to another aircraft, that is your kill. And anyone else who shoots at that aircraft after it having been caught on fire is engaging in the act of kill-stealing. If that fire subsequently goes out, then the enemy aircraft is fair game again. Anyway, so BF-109, he wants to have a go. BF-109E, uh-oh, those are dangerous. And he's got the energy advantage, and the speed, and the weaponry. Yep, he just loops up, and then he's looping back down. He's got us right where he wants us. Mr. Hurricane, though, steps in to save the day. Well done, Mr. Hurricane. But oh no, he stalled his aircraft. I'm thinking that BF-109 is probably engaged with that Hurricane. I can go do something else. Then I think, no! We must save our Hurricane friend. After all, that's what he did for us. So we must do what we can against this far superior foe. We must beat this unbeatable foe, as the song goes. I'm turning away here because I want to try and get a little bit of altitude while he's still engaging the Hurricane. And yep, he's going down, so we're going to follow. Hurricane is shooting some artillery pieces, trying to get some more points before he himself is inevitably shot down. And oh no, an HE-100's come along. He's gonna join in on the feast like a shark around the corpse of a whale. Said corpse being me in this crappy little biplane, monoplane. I'm trying to get some hits before I stall out, but no, I stall out. Which means that he has me exactly where he needs me to be. But looks like he underestimates or overestimates how maneuverable he can be, and so he goes after the Hurricane instead. It's probably wise. The Hurricane is a far more capable aircraft than the P-26. But this slight opportunity gives me an opportunity to get some shots away at the HE-100. All I need to do is hit his wings and that'll start a coolant leak. That BF-109's disappeared. I'm thinking he's probably going doing something else, but oh no! He comes round and he shoots me in the wing. And there you can see how easily the wing tanks are set on fire. And I decide, well, this aeroplane's going down. And I'll bail out. Yes. So there you have it. Well done, Mr. BF-109. P-26 B-34. Not the most productive match, but I figured it was good enough. And a slow pan towards the sky for cinematic effect. And there you have it. And so there you have it. the Boeing P-26s. All three of them. They're not very good, are they? There are certainly better reserve aircraft, such as the, well, to name one, the I-15s. They're the best. This is probably the second worst, not quite as bad as the Furies and the Nimrods, although they have their merits. They can certainly outturn this one. I think the only thing going for the P-26 is that it can carry bombs, and that one of them has an M2 Browning. But there you go. So, hope you enjoyed the video, and thank you very much for watching. Next time, well, hopefully you'll join us for the next time, where we'll be taking a little look at an American tank. Now, which American tank is up to you? You get to choose either the M2A4, I have done a video about that one before, but that was an old video which is crap and wasn't in the current format, and so I would like to do that video again. However, if you don't feel like having that video next, then you can choose to have a video about the LVT-C, whatever the amphibious reserve tank is that the Americans have. So if you would rather see that, put it in the comments. Also, next will be a bonus video, which, so you get to choose which sort of aircraft or tank you get to see in that one as well. Isn't that exciting? If nobody posts anything in the comments, however, then I shall go ahead and make a video on the M2A4, and also a bonus video of an aircraft of my choice. So, if you don't want to see what my choices are, then you'd better comment in the comments, you non-commenters. Anyway, yeah, so there you go. Boeing P-26 is. Thank you very much for watching. Oh, and also, hey, if you liked the video, you know, that subscribe button is right there. You might want to go press it with your little fingers. That sounds a bit creepy, doesn't it? Yeah, anyway. So yes, thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.